Hello everyone and welcome to our Circle and Salve Women. For today, in connection with my article, we are going to talk about fire, and its subtitle or subcontent would be never underestimate its potential. So hopefully, my hope is that, as usual, when I speak, I'm very analogous with things in the things that I speak of. And so when we talk about fire today, I really would hope that you're connecting it with the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, and perhaps the physical aspect of things in your life that can potentially promote fire, and then eventually, if not tamed or controlled, can create a very substantial amount of flame. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you my story in college. I was very, very fortunate to have a work study that allowed me to work with the direct chiefs, and it was in the main fire station headquarters. And so I was in the main building in the admin floor where everybody came in their suits, in just really business attire, and was pretty much secluded in where the chiefs were in their offices. And then you had the cubicles where people worked very hard within their areas to focus on whatever it was that was their administrative lead or leadership. And for me, I came in, unfortunately, in a time where a very devastating event had taken place. It was historically in that city where I had attended college, was where unfortunately someone had set their father's building on fire for insurance reasons. And no one plans for any of it to go wrong. You know, of course, when you make some kind of a plot in your mind, you're schematic about it and you think everything's going to be fine and everything's going to be just as smooth as I had planned. Unfortunately, the firefighters, when they came into this building that had been set ablaze, they were not aware of anybody, whether or not people were in the building or not. And so, of course, in their heroic mind, they were in there to try and clear the building, making certain that no one was inside. And several of them ended up being trapped, beams falling, just the entire structure falling down upon them. Some of them were not able to get out, and unfortunately ended up meeting their fatal demise. And so this was me coming into this time, and I recall it being very solemn, just as I mentioned in my article, where when they had attended the memorial in the morning when I was in college, and I had come in the late day, early afternoon, as they were just trickling in, it was this feeling of a loss that no one wanted to speak of, and yet they paid their respects to. And I just remember that. I remember not knowing the people that had passed away, but feeling the loss from all of those that did get a chance to know those that they had lost. And so when you speak of such things, you just have a higher respect for fire. Working directly with the chiefs and seeing the firefighters go to their floor, it's a great place, I would think, because all they did, this aroma, they love cooking, and this aroma you would always smell coming from the floor was just amazing. And you really had this sense of respect for firefighters, and knowing that they trained for these situations. And unfortunately, you can never train enough, because things do get out of control no matter how much training you've had. One of the trainings that they had, I was very fortunate to partake in. I recall I almost missed it. I was told, we're going to have a fire drill and it'll be a great experience for you. Not even being aware of what I was going to be seeing or partaking in, or just getting to really be a part of as a memory. And so I almost missed it because I was late from coming to class, and I was very fortunate that my supervising chief came back and got me. And when I arrived at the location, they were putting a home, they were going to set up a house on fire. Of course, that's the way that you would have to drill. So this is obviously a big drill where they actually were doing a simulated type of fire. And so they had everything prepped. I was just so amazed, and just really just to see everybody taking everything very seriously as they prepped everything up. And I saw some wives and, relatives that were able to sit and kind of watch from a distance. But it was nice for me to be able to walk through the house. And I was told that if everything is set up the way it's supposed to be, we're supposed to be walking through this as the house is set on fire, and you should be able to see the structure inside as we're walking through. Of course, they gave me my gear, and I'm not so certain the terminology of it, so I don't want to disrespect it, but they gave me my gear to put on. And so I was well prepared, and having gone through just the explanation of what would happen. And yet, again, not realizing the potential strength and energy of a fire as they had lit it up, and you start to see right away, this small trickle of fire just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and growing. It was really infernus. It just, this feeling of, the way I explained it in my article is like you were setting up a fire pit for a giant. And I didn't say this in my article, but really it was almost as if like you came closer to it, just like biblically. Remember that part where I think it was a Nebuchadnezzar, where he ended up creating this big fire that had put in everyone but Daniel in there. Daniel wasn't present at that time, like you've heard. But when all of a sudden it was so hot that the people that were putting them in this fire, big stove or whatever it was, we weren't there to really truly know. But it was like it was burning everybody that came close. And that's honestly, from a distance, just standing from it, that's how it felt. The heat that penetrates through you, even though you have the right gear. I can't imagine what the firefighters have to go through every time they go through such fires. And we know all the wildfires that are taking place right now. It is this feeling of, you've got to get yourself together here. Like, you have to have a straight mind to say, what should I do to maintain control so that I can still focus? Because it could easily make you lose sight and make you panic if you weren't feeling safe. And so for me, when they set this house on fire, right away, you could see that the firefighters were already hosing down trees around, everything that they had been trained to do. And because the fire started to really light up a lot faster than they had anticipated, we were not allowed to walk through it. And, just safety precaution, they were like, okay, we're just going to let this one burn down. No one's going to walk through this one. We're just going to make sure that we contain it and make sure that all of the neighboring homes adjacent to it would be fine and all the trees would be salvaged and everything. And they did a phenomenal job. Everything was a success, other than we did not get to walk through. Another time that I had experienced a fire was close to home. I remember being at home and just seeing, just first of all, feeling like there was smoke out in the air. And when I stepped out, I could see this huge cloud of black smoke. And I had already, in my mind, in the past, have already seen a recollection of knowing what a fire looks like. So all of a sudden, one of my neighborhood kids had stepped out of the house right next to me and started to exclaim, "That's my house on fire." And he's stumbling to just put on his shoes and, get home. By the time that we had gone over there to just look, didn't come close. I knew better, honestly. And I had seen other people already trying to take their family members out. And they had all immediately, fire trucks were coming into our neighborhood. Only one entrance, unfortunately. So everything was blocked off. And in fact, my husband had been out with my children, and no one could enter back in because it had been enclosed. It became so just lack of control of a fire that they really had to just focus in and bring some more fire trucks in, and they had luckily neighboring fire trucks coming in to help them as well. By the time that this fire was done, and it seemed like hours, but it really wasn't, but by the time that it had been contained and it was extinguished, the neighboring home right next to it had also been burnt down, not to just so that it became unlivable. And the one next to it was also affected, where the people had to move out for a while until it was restructured and for them to move back in. What was interesting is one of my neighbors stated that when they were trying to go in to pull out whoever was inside, because they could see that the roof was just out of control and was really starting to cave in, the grandparents, unfortunately, who were visiting at that time and were caring for their autistic grandson, the other grandson was outside, wasn't allowed to come back in. They're trying to pull him out. They had not been aware of the fire that was outside that was starting to cave in. And I think in reality, when we are in the midst of fire, we try to save whatever we can. This is the part where I find it so analogous to life, and I understood, because I remember when the fire chief says, we're not going in, just going to watch this fire go down, and it's too dangerous right now. I don't even recall if he had stated that word, but when he made that statement, everyone understood. We're not walking through this, even though we had planned to walk through it. It was supposed to be beautiful. You see all the, things start to just set on fire all around the home, but right away, instantly, they were like, we're not walking through this. Well, the grandparents that were inside, they were found actually trying to fill buckets of water, trying to put out all of the fire that was inside this home. And neighbors were saying, well, you've got to go. You've got to get out of here. You cannot stay here any second longer. We've got to pull you out. And they were refusing at first. They were trying to salvage whatever they could. And unfortunately, they couldn't. And by the time that they had pulled him out and taken him outside, it was only moments when the roof started to cave in. They had not been aware of how bad it looked from the outside. And so that's how I connect our lives with fire. We never know its potential. Fire is an energy that is fueled by oxygen and heat. And when it gets so hot, and with these forest fires, by the way, that house fire was found later on as spontaneous combustion, I believe is a term, and they never were able to really truly determine what caused it, but it was the hottest day of the year, and that cedar shake roof was, perhaps some people were blaming it on that because it was just like kindling fire. And who knows, because fire is also a mystery of sometimes how it starts. But the idea here is, when I look at it, I have so much respect because I have had such direct understanding and experience with fire and seeing the people who have been affected by it. Pardon me. You really get to see its dangers and how it can affect people in ways where you have to think so quickly, and sometimes you're unable to think. And then at the end, sometimes people are affected, impacted, and unfortunately affected in ways where it could be detrimental or fatal. So my message here is, be careful of the fires that you start. Be careful of the fires that you're going into, or that you may think is not so big, because you don't know what's coming. You don't know from the outside how bad it may look. And you may be trying to put out a little fire here, a little fire there, a little fire there. Sometimes it is more important to just step out and let the fire burn down and seeing it from the outside than trying to take it, take down the fire, extinguish fire from within, and not realizing that it's going to take you down with it. I remember that very day, very solemn day in the headquarters where overwhelmingly people were dressed in black, and I've always seen them dressed in their business attire. But that day was not a day to repeat. It was a day that they had to go through out of respect for those who unfortunately had to die and be heroic for what they had signed up for. And no one expects it. You prepare and you prepare and you prepare and you prepare, and you can never be too prepared, because sometimes when it comes caving in and you're trapped in, you don't realize that that's your last moment. And it's the same thing in that home. If those grandparents were in there with their autistic grandson, didn't have to be autistic, just be any grandson. The other grandson could have been in there as well, and they're all trying to salvage everything, and no one came in to get them out. Fortunately, they were not, but they could have found themselves trapped in there, and they could have found their demise in there as well. So be careful with those sparks. When you see a spark, put it out right away. Be careful with the fires that you try to control and maintain, because sometimes we think we have it under control, and before you know it, you're not able to walk through it. It's all of a sudden becomes too dangerous to even deal with, and you just hope that there are people who are able to help you out. But the best thing to do is respect the energy of a fire and its power, and make sure you don't start one, because you don't know how many people could actually be affected by the fires that you start. So in the words of my mother, God bless us all. I hope everyone is having a great day. If not, it's okay. As I always say, you can deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with, because you're strong, you're mighty. Just do your best to keep it under control and live to see tomorrow, to do it better again, and just do the best you can. That's all we can do, one day at a time. Have a great day, everyone. We will see you next time. Thank you for listening in.